along for the ride.
Welcome to the Solar Coaster, the wild ride to the solar industry told by the people living it every day. I'm Anna Covert.
And I'm Alex Herrera.
Have you ever noticed how the morning news can completely change your financial outlook for the month before you have even finished your coffee? You wake up, check your feed, and suddenly a pipeline issue on the other side of the planet or a sudden geopolitical spat has sent oil prices surging. And just like that, everything from your commute to the cost of groceries is about to get more expensive. It is a constant state of low-grade anxiety that we have all just accepted as normal.
It really is a fascinating psychological trap we have been living in for over a century. We have essentially tethered the entire global economy to a highly volatile, geographically concentrated liquid. Every time there's a tremor in the oil market, the shock waves hit every single wallet. But the contrast right now is what I find absolutely staggering. While the oil markets are doing their usual chaotic dance, throwing the global economy into turmoil, there is this other energy sector that is just sitting there completely unfazed. The sun came up this morning, and the cost of sunlight was exactly the same as it was yesterday, zero.
That is exactly what we need to unpack today. The sheer contrast between the turmoil in oil and the absolute, almost boring stability of solar energy. It feels like we are watching two completely different economic realities playing out at the same time. On one hand, you have the traditional energy market, which feels like a high stakes casino. On the other, you have solar, which is starting to look more like a predictable, low yield government bond. Why is the oil market so inherently fragile? Why does a single headline have the power to upend global pricing overnight?
To understand that, you have to look at the anatomy of a barrel of oil. Oil is what we call an extracted commodity. It is inherently tied to geography, which means it is inherently tied to politics. You have to find it, drill for it, pump it, refine it, put it on a massive ship, sail it across oceans that might be contested, pipe it across borders, and finally get it to a gas station. Every single step in that incredibly long supply chain is a potential choke point. If a ship gets stuck in a canal, or a refinery goes offline due to a hurricane, or a political leader decides to slash production quotas, the supply drops, panic sets in, and prices skyrocket. It is a system built on friction.
So it is not just about the total amount of oil in the ground, it is about the extreme vulnerability of the delivery mechanism. That makes sense. It is like a massive global Rube Goldberg machine where if one domino falls at the wrong angle, the whole thing stops working. But let us pivot to solar. If oil is a system built on friction, how does solar bypass that entirely? Because surely manufacturing solar panels and shipping them around the world has its own supply chain vulnerabilities, right? We have seen material shortages and trade tariffs impact the solar industry before.
You are absolutely right that manufacturing the panels involves a global supply chain, and yes, that can be subject to bottlenecks. But here is the critical fundamental difference. The supply chain for solar ends the moment the panel is installed on your roof or in a utility scale farm. Once that infrastructure is built, the fuel is free, local, and immune to geopolitics. Think of it this way. Oil is a continuous hunting and gathering operation. You have to keep hunting for it every single day to keep the lights on. Solar is farming. You plant the panel once and you harvest the energy for 25 to 30 years.
That is a brilliant way to frame it, hunting versus farming. And from a financial perspective, that completely changes how businesses and governments plan for the future. With oil or natural gas, a company has to constantly hedge against future price spikes. They have to employ massive teams of analysts just to guess what their energy costs will be next quarter. But with solar, the vast majority of your cost is the capital expenditure upfront. Once the project is financed and built, your operational expenditure is virtually flat. You know exactly what your energy will cost in 5, 10, or 20 years.
Exactly. And that predictability is becoming the ultimate premium in today's chaotic market. In the past, people looked at solar and said, well, it is nice for the environment, but it is too expensive. Now, the narrative has completely flipped. Solar is not just cheap, it is an economic anchor. When we see oil in turmoil with prices swinging wildly by 20 or 30% in a matter of weeks, major corporations and utility companies are looking at solar as a risk mitigation strategy. It is no longer just about sustainability, it is about financial survival and stability. You cannot run a modern, data-driven, high-tech economy on an energy source that might double in price because of a political argument thousands of miles away.
But let us play devil's advocate for a moment because this is the argument that always comes up. The sun sets, clouds roll in, winter happens. The stability of the price of sunlight is great, but the stability of the actual power generation has historically been the weak link. If I am running a massive manufacturing plant, I cannot tell my workers to go home just because a storm system moved in. How is the industry bridging that gap between the financial stability of solar and the physical reliability required by the grid?
That is the multi-trillion-dollar question, and it is exactly where the most exciting technological leaps are happening right now. You are right, intermittency was the Achilles heel of solar for decades, but we are no longer just installing solar panels, we are installing energy systems. The missing piece of the puzzle, which is now falling into place at an astonishing speed, is battery storage. The cost of lithium-ion batteries and now even newer chemistries like sodium-ion or iron-air batteries has plummeted following the exact same trajectory as solar panels did a decade ago.
So we are essentially decoupling the generation of the energy from the consumption of the energy. You catch the sunlight when it is abundant, box it up in a battery, and unpack it when the grid actually needs it.
Precisely. And what is fascinating is how this transforms the grid from a reactive system to a proactive one. In the old fossil fuel model, grid operators had to constantly ramp coal or gas plants up and down to match demand in real time. It is highly inefficient. With massive battery parks paired with solar, you have instantaneous digital control over the power supply. A battery can discharge energy onto the grid in milliseconds, far faster than a gas turbine can spin up. So not only is solar plus storage becoming cheaper than fossil fuels, it is actually providing a higher quality, more responsive type of electricity.
That shifts the entire paradigm. We are moving from energy as a scarce extracted commodity to energy as a manufactured technology. And technology inherently gets cheaper, more efficient, and more scalable over time. We saw it with microchips, we saw it with flat screen TVs, and now we are seeing it with energy. But I want to dig into the broader societal implications of this. If we fast forward a bit, and a significant portion of the global economy is running on this stable, hyper predictable, localized energy, what happens to the countries and the massive industries that have built their entire empires on the volatility and scarcity of oil?
That is where things get incredibly complex and frankly a little dangerous in the short term. The transition period is where the turmoil actually peaks. You have entire nations whose GDP is almost entirely dependent on exporting oil. As global demand begins to plateau and eventually decline because solar and EVs are eating into their market share, those nations face an existential economic threat. They might try to artificially constrain supply to keep prices high, which causes short-term pain for consumers and creates exactly the kind of market turmoil we are seeing now. It is the violent thrashing of a dying system.
It is almost like a paradox. The closer we get to a stable, solar driven future, the more chaotic the oil markets might become because the traditional players are losing their grip on the steering wheel. They are trying to squeeze the last drops of profit out of a shrinking pie. This must be incredibly frustrating for everyday consumers who are caught in the crossfire, paying exorbitant prices at the pump while they wait for the clean energy infrastructure to reach them.
It is incredibly frustrating and it highlights a deep inequity in how energy transitions happen. The people who can afford to put solar on their roofs and buy an electric vehicle are essentially buying a ticket out of the turmoil. They are locking in their energy costs and walking away from the casino. But lower income households or developing nations that lack the capital to build out massive solar and storage grids up front are left holding the bag. They are trapped in the volatile oil and gas markets, absorbing all the price shocks.
That is a profound point. The transition is not just a technological challenge, it is a massive challenge of capital allocation. If solar is a technology where you pay for 20 years of energy upfront, then access to cheap capital is the new dividing line. If you can get a low interest loan, you get stable, virtually free energy for decades. If you cannot, you are stuck renting your energy month to month from a highly unstable global market. It feels like the financial industry has a massive role to play here in democratizing access to this stability.
Absolutely. Financial innovation is just as important as technological innovation right now. We are seeing the rise of power purchase agreements, community solar projects, and innovative leasing models that allow people and businesses to access solar without the massive upfront cost. But zooming out, this shift represents a fundamental rewiring of global power dynamics. For the last century, geopolitical power was dictated by who controlled the oil fields and the sea lanes. If energy is generated locally by the sun shining on your own territory, the geopolitical leverage of energy completely evaporates.
It is a staggering thought. Wars have been fought, governments have been toppled, and alliances have been forged entirely around the flow of oil. If energy becomes decentralized and abundant, one of the primary drivers of global conflict just vanishes. It makes you wonder how much of our modern anxiety is artificially manufactured by our reliance on a system that is designed to be precarious.
It is the illusion of control. We built a civilization on burning things we dug out of the ground, and we convinced ourselves we were masters of the universe because we could engineer these massive, complex supply chains. But true mastery isn't about fighting the earth to extract a limited resource. It is about harmonizing with the abundant energy that is already pouring down on us every single day. Solar energy doesn't require us to conquer anything, it just requires us to be smart enough to catch it.
Harmonizing with abundance rather than fighting over scarcity. That is a beautiful way to look at it. And it really brings us back to the core contrast we started with. We are living in a split screen reality right now. On one side, you have the headlines screaming about oil in turmoil, price shocks, and supply chain crises. It is loud, it is chaotic, and it demands our attention. But on the other side of the screen, you have millions of solar panels quietly, silently soaking up the sun, doing exactly what they were engineered to do, without drama, without price spikes, and without geopolitical leverage.
And that quiet side of the screen is growing exponentially. Every time there is an oil shock, it acts as a catalyst. It pushes more homeowners, more fleet managers, and more utility executives to finally make the switch. They look at the chaos and say, I am done with this. So, in a strange, counterintuitive way, the turmoil in the oil market is actually accelerating the deployment of solar. The instability of the old world is funding the stability of the new world.
It is the ultimate irony. The volatility of fossil fuels is writing its own obituary by making the predictability of renewables too attractive to ignore. As we wrap up today's conversation, I think the biggest takeaway is a shift in perspective. The next time you see a headline about oil prices skyrocketing or gas prices jumping overnight, instead of just feeling that familiar anxiety, recognize it for what it is. It is a symptom of a legacy system that is fundamentally fragile.
Exactly. And then take a look outside. Whether it is a bright summer day or a cloudy winter afternoon, the energy we need is right there waiting to be harvested. We are in the middle of a messy, turbulent transition, but the destination is a world where our energy is as reliable and as peaceful as the sunrise.
A world where energy is no longer a weapon but a foundation. It leaves you wondering, once we finally stop worrying about how to power our civilization, what incredible things will we focus our collective energy on next? It is a future worth building, and more importantly, a future worth investing in today.
I want a solar coaster. Come along for the ride.
This episode of The Solar Coaster is narrated using AI-generated technology, representing Anna Covert and Alex Herrera. The material presented is aggregated from publicly available solar industry news sources. All commentary reflects reported industry developments and does not constitute personal opinions, investment advice, or endorsements by the hosts or
Solar
producers.
Coaster is proudly sponsored by Sun Energy Today, redefining what solar means for business and infrastructure. We engineer and deliver large-scale clean energy solutions, from megawatt solar farms to advanced graphene storage, designed for resilience, performance, and measurable return. Sun Energy Today, built to power what's next. Learn more at sunenergytoday.com.